Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Kristen here. Today I'm going to give you short, spoiler-free reviews for 3 of my recent reads, and they are The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, Empress of a Thousand Skies by Rhoda Belleza, and Long May She Reign by Rhiannon Thomas. They actually fall into 3 different categories: contemporary YA, sci-fi YA, and fantasy YA. Before I tell you my thoughts on these books, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do that and hit that subscribe button. Also, at the end of the video, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, ring that bell so you get a notification next time I post a new video, or leave me a comment to let me know. And if you haven't heard yet, I am also the owner of a book subscription box called Whimsify. I will leave a link in the description section below to my previous video, which kind of explains how I was inspired to start the subscription box and what kind of stuff you can expect to see in the box. And I will also leave a link to our official website. We are actually going to be launching in April, and depending on the time that you watch this video, our live site may be open and ready for subscribers. Okay, enough with that. Let's talk about the books. First up, we're going to talk about The Sun is Also a Star, which was written by Nicola Yoon. This is a contemporary young adult novel, and if you live in a rock, not in a rock, how would you live in a rock? If you live under a rock or in a cave, that's what it's supposed to be. So if you've been under a rock since November and haven't heard anything about this book, booktubers and bloggers were just falling in love with this book when it released in the fall. Unfortunately, I didn't jump on board until just recently, and I am so glad that I finally did, because this book was so good. This was a solid 5-star read for me. This book is told from the perspective of 2 different main characters, Natasha and Daniel, and I'm just going to give you a quick little summary of what the book's about in case for some reason you haven't seen it. Natasha's family comes from Jamaica. They moved to the United States several years ago when she was younger, but they are here in the country illegally, and on the day that we start this book, it's the day that Natasha's family is being deported and has to leave to go back home to Jamaica. On this very day, she meets Daniel, our other main character. He is from a Korean American family, and he is being pressured to go on an interview to a prestigious college that he may or may not really want to attend. So neither one of them are having a great day when they meet each other on the street, and that's how the story starts. Even though this is a contemporary, it still has that something other in it that typically draws me into contemporary books. This one has some chapters written from the point of view of the universe. It kind of gives you like a third-person omniscient point of view of what's going on with Natasha and Daniel. It also gives you these very brief chapters in between Natasha and Daniel's chapters that give you a little bit of background information with the side characters. At first, I was really kind of confused about that. I wasn't enjoying that. I thought that was kind of pulling me out of Natasha and Daniel's story. But as the book goes on, you realize that the side character stories weave into Natasha and Daniel's stories, and it was so unique and so cool to see that other perspective and get a little bit of background information and then see how everybody's stories were like interwoven. It was really cool, and the end of this book ripped my heart out, put it back in, ripped it out again. I was so like an emotional wreck when I finished this book, and I mean that in the very best way. Plus, the cover of this book is ridiculously beautiful. This is one of my favorite covers of 2016. This was actually a photograph of these colored threads woven together. That was a real photograph that they took for this cover. It's not just a drawn illustration, and it's also partially an own voices book because the author Nicola Yoon is the same race as one of our main characters. So if you are looking to broaden your horizon with a really fantastic book with diverse characters, I would highly recommend The Sun is Also a Star, just like everybody else does. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is Empress of a Thousand Skies. This was written by Rhoda Belleza or Belleza, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, and I believe this is her debut novel, and what a debut it was. I actually had the print copy of this book and started it in print, but then I found out that the audiobook narrator was Rebecca Solar, who is my all-time absolute, hands down, favorite audiobook narrator. She narrated all of Marissa Meyer's Lunar Chronicles books and her recent release, Heartless. She is phenomenal. She always brings every story to life. If you're an audio fan, I would definitely check this one out on audiobook. This has a very typical sounding synopsis. It doesn't really sound that unique or original. A princess who everybody thinks is dead. She's kind of on the run and in hiding, but at the same time trying to take back her throne. That doesn't really seem that unusual for a YA, fantasy, or sci-fi book. However, this is actually a very diverse book. I can't think right now off the top of my head of a really diverse fantasy YA book or sci-fi YA book. I'm sure that there are some, but the fact that I can't even think of any right off the top of my head means that the fact that this one exists and it was really good is awesome. 2 thumbs up. We need more like this. Our main characters here are Rhiannon and Alyosha. Rhiannon is the long-lost princess who is trying to reclaim her throne, but she's also on the run because people are trying to assassinate her. And Alyosha is the second main character, and he is the person who has been blamed for her assassination. He is the scapegoat that the bad guys have pinned the murder that actually didn't happen on. There's a lot of prejudice and racism that's discussed in this book because the only reason Ali has been pinned as the murderer of Rhi is because he comes from the planet Rhaeta, and everybody knows that the Rhaetans are violent and brash. They are dark-skinned. They describe Alyosha as having very dark brown or black skin. What's really interesting here is Rhoda Belleza. She wrote in a lot of like intergalactic politics and real-world Earth 2017 issues into this science fiction, and it was really well done. She wrote in a lot of things that mirror what's going on in our world today. I am going to go ahead and tell you guys something right now, and I hope you don't consider it a spoiler because I actually personally do not think it's a spoiler. I think it's very important for you to know up front. The summaries on Goodreads and Amazon and Barnes & Noble make it sound like Rhi and Ali are thrown together in this adventure and their fight to save the throne and win back the kingdom and do the right thing and clear Ali's name. And Rhi and Ali are not together in this story. The book is told in alternating points of views between Rhi and Ali, and they never meet. Their stories are happening simultaneously, but they are not together, and I just feel like I would have enjoyed the book a lot more if I knew that up front. The summaries don't really do it justice. It really should be explained that that's the case because for like half of the book, I kept waiting for their paths to cross and them to meet. And actually it was really refreshing that this was such a different story and that the little bit of romance that there was in this book, it was much different than I thought it was going to be, and it wasn't happening for most of the book. I really feel like this was well done, but poorly described. Hopefully you don't find that a spoiler. Let that go. Don't keep waiting for them to meet and you'll enjoy the book much more. This is a very complicated book. It kind of feels like you're reading like Star Wars light almost. And if you're a Star Wars fan and you like YA books, this is the book for you. This is a series and I am super excited to see where the series goes next. Everything wraps up enough that you feel settled with the way the story ends, but you also know that there's so much more that's going to happen. There's a lot of reveals and plot threads that were not tied up. I'm really looking forward to the next book in this series. Okay, and the last book that I want to give you my spoiler-free thoughts on today is Long May She Reign by Rhiannon Thomas. This is a young adult fantasy book. It is marketed as fantasy. I will tell you it is definitely a little bit light in the fantasy department. It is an imaginary kingdom, but there's not really much magic or anything like that happening. This caught my attention because it has a really cool cover. It's like a fantasy kingdom inside a science like beaker type of bottle, and that really caught my attention. And when you read the back of the book, it talks about our main character Freya, who was never supposed to be queen. She is 23rd in line for the throne. She lives in a kingdom where they set up a long series of people who are in line for the throne if something happens to the person before them. Well, one night at the king's birthday dinner, everybody gets poisoned and dies, and all of a sudden Freya is the next living person in line for the throne. That's intriguing to me enough. However, on top of that, and my favorite thing, is that Freya is really into science. And that is unusual in her kingdom, to be a girl and be smart and be science-minded. And I really love the way that she is described and portrayed in this story. She is very smart. She is not brash. She is not necessarily like quick thinking. She's kind of like a quiet thinker, and then when she makes her mind up, she says something. She really loves to do science experiments and mix chemicals and metals and things like that. And the description of that in this like medieval style fantasy world was really cool to see how they would do science without our modern technology that we have in our real world today. Freya just held this whole book together for me. I just really, really loved her character, and I loved seeing a combination of realistic contemporary science in this fantasy setting. And this really plays out more like a whodunit type mystery. So if you like that type of story, I highly recommend Long May She Reign. There is a little bit of romance here, and I actually really, really enjoyed the romance because it was not insta-love. It took a while to roll out, and I was really grateful for that. I thought it was done really well. There's also really, really great girl BFFs in this book. Freya and her best friend have such a great friendship, and I really loved seeing that girl bonding and that really great girl friendship in the story. They're very supportive of each other, and they care a lot about each other. I think sometimes we don't see that enough, and sometimes we don't see them at all in fantasy and sci-fi. So I was really, really grateful to see that. I had some suspicions about who the murderer was. However, I was still really surprised when the reveal took place, and the way everything went down the last couple of chapters of the book was really interesting because this is a standalone novel. I could see this having a sequel or becoming a series or having like a novella, like an epilogue style novella written about it, because the ending feels complete, but there's a couple of things that you still kind of want to know more about. Even though the author still says this is definitely a standalone fantasy, I think there's a lot of potential for it to grow or for there to be some sort of spin-off or novella in the future. Alright guys, that's it. Hopefully I have inspired you to go pick one of those up because I loved all three of those books so much. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!